Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. So today I'm going to just open the Komodo, as they like to say. I'm going to tell you about how I acquired my first $1 million plus in assets with real estate. And then on the following episode, I'm actually going to share with you how I lost $2 million worth of real estate. All right. So the before and the after. And I'm also going to tell you things that I've learned in the process. I want to do this because one, transparency is pretty cool. But the other thing that's pretty cool is being able to share with others about things that I've done. Now, listen, here's the thing. I'm sharing with you what I have done. Whether or not you want to do it, whether or not you've done it, is kind of irrelevant. You can make the decision on your own as an adult on what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, whatever. I'm just sharing with you what I have done, all right, what I've actually done. So let me give you backstory real quick. So we'll talk about gaining over $1 million plus in real estate assets, right? So first off, I want you guys to know that this first happened in 2015, 2016. This process, right? And so I remember, and this is what kind of brought this on. I remember I had just done a deal that brought in like $40,000 of cash, right? Now the issue with this is that I had put like a lot of effort, a lot of time into getting this deal from start to finish. And this was a deal that had to deal with like structuring financing, had to deal with acquisitions, had to deal with some real estate stuff, real estate finance, all that good stuff, right? And so the deal finally closed, and I'm like, yes, awesome, right? And so I got 40 grand for it. Now there was an issue. The issue is, although 40 grand is more than I think like the average person at that time within my area was making, right, as a salary, so that was pretty cool. But the issue was, after I got the 40 grand, I was like exhausted. And I was exhausted mentally. I was exhausted emotionally. I was just exhausted, right? And so I was like, wow, for me to get another 40 grand, and it took me about like, I'm gonna say like 4 or 5 months. Okay, it's a long time. And so I was like, wow, am I gonna have to put forth the same amount of effort again to make another 40 grand, right? What if I wanna do, 50 grand? Do I have to, put forth the same amount of effort, right? And anyone who's ever done a deal, you know that when you first get a deal, there's like this euphoria, right? In reference to an opportunity. And then you kind of go through some troughs if it's not like a smoking hot deal, right? And you have this back and forth negotiations, all that stuff. And when you kind of collapse all the time you put into it, it kind of ends up being like 30 days or so of actual time that you actually have to put into it, right? A lot of the other stuff is like, it's really like your mind and you worrying about what to do next over and over and over again. That is actually where a lot of time happens. So I was like, okay, cool. What can I do to grow this $40,000? Like I still have bills, I got things I have to take care of, I have obligations. And if you guys know my story, you know that at this point in my life, I had already been like fired or let go, whatever, from a corporate job. I had just got married, right? All that stuff. And so I still had responsibilities, things I had to pay, et cetera, et cetera. And so after I had got fired, unfortunately, I had student loans that I did not make payments on. And so those student loans basically killed my credit. So even though now I had capital, and this is back in, like I said, 2015. So now I had capital enough to put down on, like, let's say an apartment building or a rental property. That's great. But I didn't have the credit score that I could qualify for some of the lending programs that were available at that time frame, right? So it's okay, what do I do? So I figured it out, said, you know what? What if I could do some creative deals? Like what if I could take 20 grand and begin to buy a duplex or a triplex, right? Or a fourplex, whatever else, right? That was my mindset. And I didn't come to that conclusion immediately. It like took a lot of, it was just God, really. It took a lot of time for me to kind of get that even through my thick skull. So when I started going the route of looking for creative financing, I started looking for private lenders. And here's the thing I want people to understand. For some reason, the way our crazy minds work, and also the way that people are receptive to our minds, is that people are more likely to lend you money, specifically private money lenders and banks, actually. So I guess anyone. People are more specific and more desiring to lend you money when you don't need it. So what does that mean? That means that what you should do is you should practice presenting deals, practice presenting opportunities, equity, injections and things like that to people when you don't even need it. Like that's mic check 1 1 2. Like you should start presenting. Say this one more time. Let's get this over here a little closer to me. All right. So you guys understand what I'm saying. You should start presenting deals, like your pitch deck. Okay. You should start presenting pitch decks to private lenders, your aunt, your uncle, your third cousin removed, your cousin that used to play in the NFL but now no longer does. Like you should start presenting offers and opportunities to people when you don't need the money. What's interesting is that people are more willing to invest in you when you don't need the money. Crazy, right? It's crazy how life works out that way. People are more interested in investing in you when you do not need the money. So there was a lady, I'm not going to say her name, but she actually lent me money on multiple properties in which the purchase and the closing costs were all paid for. Like I legit didn't have to pay for anything. All I had to do was sign at the title company, right? And the trade-off was that it was interest. Now, the cool thing was I had gotten good enough to where I was able to find opportunities. So like, for example, some of the properties I got were literally about one was like $8,000, but like I was on average between 10 and 13,000 per property. And so she would lend me money out of her IRA, right? It was a written agreement, it was a mortgage basically, had my company name on it, blah, blah, blah. And she lent me money to purchase a few rentals. So I owned the rentals, but she owned the mortgage, okay? And that woke up something in me. I said, wow, wait a second. Why would she be more interested in lending me the money to buy rentals? Why is it that she's more excited for me to take on a mortgage than for herself to actually just buy rentals? Because my mindset initially was I was looking at her as more of a buyer at first, right? So I was looking to do a wholesale deal with her just to make more money. And she was like, yeah, Leon, that sounds like a great deal. I was like, yeah, blah, 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 right? I'm trying to push this deal to her. And she's like, well, honestly, I mean, it does sound like a good deal. There are tenants already in that property. If you're getting a really good deal, would you be interested in buying the properties? I was like, yeah, I would. I mean, but I wouldn't want to use my own money, my own, $15,000 to buy it. She's like, well, if you're willing to, to pay, let's say 8 or 10% interest, I'm willing to actually finance your purchase. I was like, what? I was like, wait a second. Now, even to this day, I have never met this woman. I've never met her, like physically. Like we talk, email, phone call. But I never actually met her. And she wired the money to the title company from her IRA, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a whole other story what I found out as far as with assets, right? A lot of us think that assets are just real estate and or having a business. But one of the best assets you can have is actually paper, AKA a mortgage. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day, right? So What then happened was, I had these rentals, and you think about it again. That's 3 rental properties where there was no money out of my pocket. All of the acquisitions were under $15,000. And so there was built-in equity. This is back in 2015. And these are properties that at that time had a value of about 50 grand. That's kind of how the rental market was in Indianapolis at that time, 2015. So cool. I just added, $150,000 worth of equity to me, $0 out of my pocket. It was cool, right? So I then began looking at smaller or small, quote unquote, small size apartment buildings. And I came across this guy he actually came as a referral. That's another thing for you guys. Like, some of the best deals that I've come across were referrals. Like, it wasn't necessarily the lead generation. And don't get me wrong, I've had good lead generation, but a lot of the most fantastic deals have been what we call pocket listings, or something where someone. It could be a realtor, it could be a property manager, whatever, who knows someone else who's a owner of a property who wants to get out of the property, and for whatever reason, this person hasn't come to the conclusion of listing it with a realtor or putting it on the market. They haven't come to the conclusion yet of, putting a sign out in the yard, right? It's just a conversation that they've been having within themselves, and also with other friends and or family members, right? And so when someone says to you, "Oh yeah, actually I do have someone who might be interested in selling their property," you're like, "Oh, cool, great," right? And that's how it was with this property. And so this was a 4-plex. If you guys have already downloaded the Creative Finance masterclass, I go into detail about the agreement and all that stuff and how this happened. But what ended up happening was, for less than $2,000 of cash money, I purchased a small apartment building. Sounds crazy, right? And again, what I'm getting at is, it's amazing how your mind approaches things. And it's also amazing how people also are eager to do business with you. It's so weird. When you don't have any money, I think what our minds do, or our bodies or something like that, they give off a smell maybe, or or what do they call it, pheromone, something like that. It gives off a smell, or it gives off a vibe, as people like to say in my generation. And it gives off the vibe of broke, or the vibe of don't do business, right? But then as you're making money, it's like you give off the vibe of, hey, I'm a deal maker. You want to make a deal? Let's do a deal. Come to me, right? And so the guy, I met with him about 3 times at the property, and he came from a referral from the property manager, all right? And he was like, hey, listen, at that time, the property was worth about $250,000, right? And so he was like, listen, I owe the bank, I think he said maybe $200,000, something like that. It's like I did a refinance with the bank, and there's different things that need to be repaired within property. Now here's the thing: the property had tenants inside of it, right? And so he had rents that were about $500 a month, but he knew that if he wanted to really make some good money off the property, he would need to increase those rents. And he wasn't able to increase those rents without basically increasing value into the property. So if you think about it that way, he was kind of stuck in a catch-22 because he had already taken the money out of the property. I think he went to Vegas with it or something crazy because he was an older guy. No, actually, he got married. He took the money out of the property and got married to this younger woman. And so basically now his money was gone. And he didn't have the money to increase the rents, so he was kind of stuck with getting these really, really small, basically, profit on the building. And he knew that if he were to sell it on the market, he would have to pay a realtor, right? And we go into these numbers a lot more deeper into that masterclass. But yeah, so doing deals like that, doing deals like that over and over again, I was able, using creative, because my credit at that point was shot. Like, it was a shot. There wasn't a way, or there could have been a way, it's not true. There wasn't a actual way for me to use traditional financing for these investment properties. And that's a blessing in disguise, because now here it was, I was able to keep more money in my pocket, and then technically, in most of these cases, make infinite amounts of return. Like, infinite return is when you don't put any necessarily cash out of your hands into an opportunity, but it then still pays you dividends. It was paying me cash flow. So I was getting infinite return on my money, right? So then after doing more and more deals like that, so now I'm building portfolio. The asset value of the portfolio is increasing over and over again. Then I started looking into people, and these people, most of these people came from referrals and from marketing, where I started talking and having conversations with people who were behind on their mortgage, right? And so I began to learn about subject to investing. You guys may call it things like sub to. That's a coin marketing phrase that Pace Morby has kind of pushed throughout the industry as sub to. But subject to investing is something that has been around for decades, and I myself did not discover it until around this time period, right, of the story. So what ended up happening was that the person who was behind on their mortgage would willingly sell their property to me for the amount of money that was needed to catch up the mortgage. And in many cases, the money that was needed to catch up the mortgage would be paid directly to their lender, their bank. And I would, in some cases, pay them money to actually move out of the house, like give them, moving costs, right? Or sometimes even reimburse them for moving costs. So, quick example, let's say that someone was behind on their mortgage, $3,000. I would pay $3,000 to their bank. They would sign over their home in a subject to agreement, in which you have to structure it properly, right? It's a big thing. And then they would move, right? And in many cases, to be honest with you, a lot of people had already vacated the homes, believe it or not. So that became like another opportunity, right? So now I'm purchasing properties doing a subject to method. And so this is a method that you can use for residential properties. Commercial is more familiar with it because there's less hoops you have to go through for commercial, but you can do this for residential and for commercial properties. All right. So then I started doing subject tos. Then I started looking into master lease agreements for commercial properties, right? And that's essentially where you basically are it's almost like you have the rights similar to subleasing and or land contract when it comes to a master lease agreement, right? So they became like 10-unit apartment buildings where I was doing this for. Just smaller apartment buildings in which I was doing this. And what I found out is that you could take $5,000 or $3,000 and you could turn that into a $1 million asset just by having the right method, having the confidence really in knowing what you're doing. And so that opened my eyes. That opened my eyes to where money really is, quote unquote, a number. But what's more valuable is your confidence, for one. You gotta have your confidence. And then two, like your creativity. Because it opened up my eyes to where, wow, I don't have to use my money for these things. I can raise money from someone else. I can structure a deal to where I can pay someone over time. I can do a lease agreement. I can do a master lease agreement. I can do a structured creative financing deal, right? All these things became eye openers. And I was like, wow, why did no one ever tell me about this, because this is what I should have learned in business, right? This is what I should have learned in college. And before you know it, I had well over millions of dollars worth of real estate in a portfolio in which cash out of pocket, in all honesty, was extremely slim. We're talking probably maybe 10 grand, right? Maybe 12 grand worth of cash out of pocket. So in the next episode, I'm going to share with you how I lost over $2 million in real estate. Okay. How I lost over $2 million in real estate. And also with how I lost over $10 million in real estate, I'm going to share with you the mistakes in which that happened. All right. So just sharing with you guys what I have actually done. With that being said, if this makes sense, if you like it, cool. If not, I don't care. Just stop listening. Yeah. But if it makes sense, cool. Let me know. And if there's other things you guys want to learn about, hear about, I'll be happy to do that as well. Peace.